Good evening. This is the Daily Drum for Wednesday, May 1st. Here's what's happening. Republicans are calling on D.C. leaders to break up the ongoing pro-Palestinian protests on the campus of George Washington University. Today, lawmakers were on campus but were drowned out by protesters when they tried to speak.
You would expect to pull it, sir. And you would not allow that. You would call the police to come in and get people out of your home. It is no different on private transit.
House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer and others toured the encampment. They were heckled by demonstrators during a press conference. Comer announced he plans to hold a hearing to question D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and police chief next week. When asked about the criticism, Mayor Bowser had this to say.
I thought it was interesting. And now the members have universities in their own districts, especially the member from North Carolina. And I was watching a lot of activity in North Carolina. It would seem that her energy would be best placed there.
D.C. police reportedly refused to confront the encampment despite a request from the university. 3 people were injured after being bitten by 4 dogs in Southeast D.C. this morning. D.C. Fire and EMS said 1 person was taken to a hospital, 2 others were treated and evaluated where it happened, 13th and T Street Southeast. 1 dog has been detained, 2 others are still on the loose. Well, the family of a security guard killed at a gentleman's club in Prince George's County are calling on the public for help. 28-year-old Alex Lynch was shot to death in March of 2023, and the 3 killers remain at large. Today, his older brother, Alex Young, made a plea for help.
It's been total hell without having my little brother around. Like I said, that's my baby brother. Don't know the motive of it. I'm trying to find out. The family wants to know why y'all killed my little brother.
Lynch was working at the Area Code Club on Chilham Road when it happened. A $25,000 reward is being offered for information. And the D.C. Council is working on a program to require moped owners to register their vehicles. This comes after a steady rise in the use of mopeds on city streets and a rise in complaints about reckless and unsafe driving. The bill would require companies that rent mopeds to register and insure them. It would also create new requirements to ensure vehicle safety and regulate how mopeds are used for food delivery. Well, here's a look at our weather now. Tonight, absolutely beautiful, clear with low humidity lows in the mid-60s. Tomorrow, sunny and warm with highs around 90. Well, coming up, Education Roundtable. We are talking about the challenges and struggles teachers are facing. Insight is next on WHUR and WHUT TV.
On the go and on demand, WHUR and WHUT are with you. Download the WHUR app today to get full access to shows, playlists, and our latest contests. To access WHUT on demand, download the PBS app and make Howard University Television your station. Catch up on our WHUT original productions anytime, anyplace on YouTube at WHUT TV. WHUR and WHUT, better together.
D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. You might have noticed something a little different on Monday nights at 8 p.m. I'm Angie Ange, our Director of Content here at WHUT. And Monday nights at 8 p.m., we like to call it Must See DMV. All your favorite shows from all your favorite creators focus solely on what makes D.C., Maryland, and Virginia so special. So set your clock and we'll catch you at 8 p.m. right here on WHUT, Howard University Television, telling your stories on your station.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR, Sirius XM Channel 141, and WHUT TV. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, we sit down with educators to talk about some of the difficult realities of the job. We're talking to male educators tonight. And teaching, as we all know, remains one of the most honorable professions in America. But what is required of them has changed considerably over the generations. The job has also become dangerous in some cases. Well, lawmakers have tried to respond with mixed support. Well, my guests are Dr. William Clay, professional school counselor, the 2023 Maryland Minority Public Educator of the Year, also Austin Weatherington, 4th and 5th grade lead teacher at Bishop Walker School for Boys. A reminder, you can X me on H. Fisher WHUR. You can certainly also find me on Instagram and Facebook at Harold T. Fisher. And by the way, I posted a question about some of the struggles that educators are facing today. And we have a laundry list of responses. Austin, Dr. Clay, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Harold, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, before I even get into the meat of this conversation, I want our viewers and our listeners to understand, specifically, who I'm talking to, and the depth and the breadth of experience that both of you have. Austin, talk to me about what you're doing and where you work, the school that you work for.
Sure. I'm a little bit shy of 10 years, a little bit shy of a decade being in the classroom. I have the privilege to work at the Bishop Walker School for Boys, situated 1801 Mississippi Avenue, right in Southeast Washington. We are a K-5 school, service 75 boys, about 15 per class, cater to the social emotional needs, academic excellence, community service, spiritual development, and I try to add some comedy in there too. I try to.
Coming to the stage at Bishop Walker.
If you leave my classroom, you're gonna have some jokes. But no, it is a beautiful place to work, and it has absolutely informed many of my ideas when it comes to community, brotherhood, manhood, and things of the like. So, yeah.
Dr. Clay.
This is year 24. I'm currently working at Walden Woods Elementary School in Clinton, Maryland, under the leadership of Dr. Albert Baker, my principal. I'm a professional school counselor. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about it. Go into the classroom, teach classroom guidance lesson on social skills, group counseling, individual counseling, working with the parents, empowering the men to get involved. Especially at the elementary level, I think is critically important. So this is my first year back in elementary school after 12 years in middle school. So I see the importance of bringing black men into the school building, and my principal believes in it also, making sure we have black men on staff.
If you look back over the 24 years that you have been doing this, how would you characterize the state of education from when you first started to where it is now? And I'm not just talking about certainly your own experiences, but the experiences of your professional peers and what, some of the things that they are dealing with, some of the challenges and struggles.
I said, as time progresses, the lack of parental involvement is increasing. That's it. Parental involvement is on the downside.
Drill down a little bit. Why does that make a difference?
Because the parent is the first person that inspires a child. And if they're not active, what can we do as educators? It kind of handcuffs us. We're basically handcuffed. A child walking into our building and with no parental support and no parental involvement. And the teacher's required to teach a child, to educate a child, and then the counselor has to address these social and emotional issues. So it's like a continuing cycle. And it's a recurring cycle. And that's what I'm seeing from, I would say, the early 2000s up to now, that parental involvement piece, because everybody's making money and they're busy. So we don't spend no time with our kids. And I'm not saying all, but that's the difference, to answer your question.
What do you think, Austin?
I couldn't agree more. I have the pleasure of currently working at an institution where parental involvement is extremely high, which allows me to do my job much better. Everything from classroom needs and supplies to communication. I have a very active 4th and 5th grade classroom where not only can I communicate with them, but they're present in the building. We have an active PA, but I also think that that's an extension of the mission of our school. We kind of have adopted a village mindset where we understand how important the home is. and the parents, especially at an all-boys school, understand that too. So I have not experienced the lack of parental involvement in my tenure, but I have experienced the benefit of having parental involvement. So if I didn't have it, I agree with Dr. Clay 100% that it would be extremely difficult to achieve academic outcomes and social emotional outcomes when the parents are not involved.
You said something that struck me, though. Your school, it's not a public school. Mm-hmm. It's not a charter school. Right. It's an independent school. Right. But the thing that struck me was that the class size, 15 students. Right. Okay. 15 students is a jury with alternates and one missing. I mean, that's a really small class size, and I would argue that in covering education for a really long time, all teachers would love to have a small class size like that. Mm-hmm. So that you have a unique advantage over class sizes in most public schools across this country.
I would agree, and I think that's an astute analogy with the jury piece, because as a lead instructor, it can feel like you're on trial sometimes. Sometimes when you have 20 and 30 kids, you might be able to get away with some things, but let my shoe be untied and they pointing it out. So it is a situation where you have, I would say, a greater opportunity to make personal impacts in small classrooms. And, research shows that small classroom environments do yield great results over time, because kids get a little bit more personalized instruction. But that said, I think when you have a smaller class size, you also have larger expectations. So, if a child is getting more direct instruction, more time in the seat, then, the goals for that child academically would probably tend to be higher. The expectations that I know I have for my students are higher because I'm here with you. We're right here. You can walk up to me. You can ask me any kind of question. I'm pulling small groups. So there's a benefit, when it comes to not having to spread yourself too thin, but there's also a challenge when it comes to making sure that the growth and the expectations are being met. So,
Dr. Clay, over the past 24 years, as an educator, counselor, what have you, kind of talk to me about some of the biggest struggles or challenges that you've had.
The father component.
What do you mean by
parental? The male presence in the lives of students. I think that's probably one major issue. Parental involvement, that's been the second one. And the third one is the lack of parents understanding the social emotional development of their children. Critical.
Explain. First of all, the father piece. We know that there is some truth to that. There are stereotypical tropes to that, and there is stuff that's in the middle of all of that. Talk to me about the impact of a lack of fathers or father figures in the lives of students.
Well, I mean, when you talk about the impact, especially on the social emotional development, because I'm looking from the counselor's lens.
Okay.
Males are not taught to be emotional beings. So if you grew up in a household and you're raised by a single mother, you're not really taught how to deal with your emotions. So for the last 20 years, I've seen a lot of emotionally constipated boys and emotionally incarcerated boys who can't deal with their emotions.
Emotionally incarcerated.
Right.
What is that? What do you mean?
Well, I call it emotional psychological incarceration. And it's a non-diagnostic medical diagnosis. It's a result of trauma. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the public school setting, from the age of birth to the age of 14, when they're exposed to trauma, they become emotionally constipated. If you don't address the trauma during that time period, their emotions become incarcerated when they go to the 9th grade into adulthood. That's why your highest failure rate is the 9th grade across the nation, because you haven't dealt with the trauma from childhood. So a lot of our young boys are walking into public schools, into classrooms, emotionally constipated because of trauma. And they're not taught how to deal with it, because when they go home, they're still mad because my father's not present. And the parent don't understand what's really going on with that particular child.
Austin, you talked about, getting a lot of parental involvement at Bishop Walker. Are these parents volunteering, or is this a mandatory requirement? And the reason I ask is because, when my daughter was in school, and she attended Bishop McNamara in Prince George's, that's a private school. Parental involvement was mandatory.
Yeah.
Or there would, and if you didn't come and help set up the chairs and the tables for the bake sale or whatever it was, then there was a fee that you were assessed. And putting a child through private school, I always win. I couldn't afford the fee.
Yeah.
But how is it at Bishop Walker?
Yeah. I don't believe we've ever had to mandate volunteer hours from parents, because we have a very strong PA. We have a parent association at Bishop Walker where they recruit parents. They have very strong relationships with parents from across grades, and they recruit parents for everything from the Mother-Son Dance that we just threw, and it was a great success, all the way down to, after-school activities with the soccer team or something like that, where it comes to refreshments or things like that. So I think our school has done a great job of curating a PA. We have a PA president that kind of changes every year because, that president's son may have graduated and it gets passed down. And it's a lot of work. I actually just talked to our PA president yesterday, and she's like, "Woo, I'm tired," And
Right.
I said, "Yeah, it is quite the haul when it comes to not only executing, but just managing people, and managing children." So I think our school has done a good job of the PA piece, but I don't think we've ever had to mandate, not since I've been there.
This is a educators roundtable. We're talking to male educators about some of the challenges and the struggles in modern education. Of course, this is just the beginning of an extended conversation that we are having today. And as I mentioned, I posted on social media, my question today was, what are the biggest struggles for teachers in public education today? And I promised that I would be sharing some of the comments. And to Dr. Clay's point, almost to a person, Keith writes, generally lack of parental involvement, among other things. Gordon, uninvolved parents. Tanya, and I want you to comment on this, Dr. Clay, because she also agreed with Keith about lack of parental involvement. But then she added something that I thought was a little profound. Parental denial of their child's inability to learn. Do you understand what and I can only read it for what it says. It says again, denial of their child's inability to learn. It goes on to say inattentiveness in class and behavioral issues. Talk to me about your thoughts about that.
Attentiveness in class? What the individual stated about parental...
Yeah, I mean, I can only read it. I can't read into it, but it just says parental denial of their child's inability to learn.
That's quite interesting. This past year, this is my first year back in elementary school, and I've experienced that probably about 20% of this year. And it's quite...
What does that mean to you?
That the parents, because they're not involved, they don't understand the process. I had a parent contact me, her child, she wants her child to skip a grade.
Why?
She feels like her child is advanced.
Okay. Well, we think that all of our children are smart, just like we think all of our children are beautiful.
Well, come to find out, you haven't spoken to the teacher the whole half of the year. You haven't participated like parents should participate, but you think your child is smart enough to be moved to a whole nother grade. So I had to explain to her there's a process. In Prince George County, we have to go through school instructional team called the SIT process, where the team sits down at the table like we do today, and we look at your test scores, academic progression, how are you doing socially and emotionally, and then we come up with a conclusion if you're able to skip a grade. It's a lot more. I'm just giving you a short version.
But I mean,
But this parent was clueless.
Does that happen a lot?
Yeah, and they get upset.
Skipping children by grade.
Oh, no, I would, no.
Yeah, I would imagine not unless...
Because you really have to, it's a process.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you have to at least observe a child probably about six to 8 months before you can skip a child to a whole grade. But the parents, they clueless. They young parents. They don't know. Somebody told them, call the school, and they'll skip your child to another grade. Mm-hmm. And they think it's that. So I had to break down the process to the parent. And hear nothing else from them.
So obviously they were listening.
Right.
And they understood.
But and what I find very interesting, back in elementary school, a lot of the parents are more open to taking advice from a male counselor.
Really?
Than a female educator.
Why do you think that is?
I'm still trying to process and figure that out.
Yeah, because if everybody is qualified, okay, and coming from a family of educators, I would not have chosen to listen less or more to my mother than I would to my father, or to my stepmother, or to my godparents. To me, it would be all the same, but obviously there's something amiss there. Do you have any thoughts about that?
You dropped a bomb on that, actually. That's a tough one. Can I ask, so the people, the parent, would it be single women parents? Would it be households that would prefer the advice of the male counselor over the female teacher? Kind of what, if there was a trend, what does that person look?
I would basically look at it from the standpoint, maybe because they look at the counselor from a neutral standpoint.
Okay.
The teacher is a threat. The teacher, they look at it, I'm not going to say look at the teacher in a threatening manner, but I guess they might be looking at me from a neutral standpoint. Okay. And I'm a black male.
Right.
So I'm neutral.
Right.
So maybe a woman counselor may also have some of the same influence that a teacher may not. Is that possible?
I think it's important, relationship and rapport. I was talking about that earlier. Mm-hmm. Relationship and rapport equals Common Core. If you build relationship and rapport with parents, and you find something in common with that parent, you can get to the core of whatever you're trying to accomplish. But I think I'm still looking at it from the perspective, based on my experience and talking to my colleagues, it's a different conversation speaking to a male educator versus a female educator, and how parents observe that fact.
And I guess when you are figuring out what works, and if everyone has the same goal, if the male counselor has the same goal of educating this student and getting the message, then you don't shoot the messenger, you bring the best messenger.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I need to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to continue this conversation at the Educators Roundtable. But don't forget, you can hear every edition of the Daily Drum Insights segment via podcast on WHUR.com. And of course, you can download the 96.3 HD2 app on your smartphone and hear the program live in its entirety. The Daily Drum will continue right here on WHUT TV, Sirius XM Channel 141 and 96.3 HD2. I'm Harold Fisher. John Mons is next with the original Quiet Storm. That's on WHUR. We'll be back on WHUT TV and Sirius XM Channel 141 in just a bit.
WHUT is dedicating weekdays at 10:30 a.m. to bring you the best of our locally produced series, like our Arts and Artists show, Artico, our energetic music series, DMV The Beat.
Get Out. When I wrote that song, we were fighting.
and stories highlighting the endurance of the human spirit with legacy.
He used to say to me all the time, when I die, the newspaper's yours.
So remember, tune in weekdays at 10:30 a.m.
Howard University Television PBS and WHUR 96.3 are joining forces Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. as we bring you Harold Fisher and the Daily Drum live as we take you inside the stories of the DMV. We've got the experts and the people that matter most to help you make informed decisions for your family and your community. That's the Daily Drum, Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. live on WHUT and WHUR. Better together.
Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUT TV and Sirius XM Channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We are at the Reporters Roundtable talking about some of the important issues, and I said reporters, Education Roundtable, about some of the important issues for modern educators. We continue with Dr. William Clay, a professional school counselor and the 2023 Maryland Minority Public Educator of the Year, and Austin Weatherington, 4th and 5th grade lead teacher at Bishop Walker School for Boys here in D.C. Of course, as always, you can X me at HFisher, WHUR, or find me on Instagram or Facebook at Harold T. Fisher. This conversation is getting juicy, as it should be. And I want to kind of go back to some of the comments that I heard on social media. I saw posted on social media today after kind of reaching out to our viewers, our listeners, and asking just what they thought about some of the struggles. I will say that a lot of you have an interesting sense of humor. And some of your comments are shady and biting, but I think there is a bit of truth that comes with it. And one of the things Emmett writes: students have the newest iPhone in your class, but when you call their parents about their behavior, their phone is disconnected. So, Dr. Clay, so I guess I would imagine sometimes, parents just don't want to talk.
Correct.
So how do you deal with that, short of grabbing, finding out the address and knocking on a door? Because I would imagine that in more serious circumstances, you would need to do something like that.
Well, in more serious circumstances, usually we can go into the system. There's emergency contact. I would say 90% of the time, if we can't get in contact with the parent, we utilize the emergency contact, which allows us to get in contact with someone. But there are times when we can't get in contact with the parent, and we reach out to the pupil personnel worker, and they take the next step into reaching out to the parents, because we don't have that kind of time to be. There are situations where sometimes, if we can't reach a parent, then based on the circumstances, you might have to go to another level. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the Joe Clark,
the baseball bat.
The baseball bat, chain the doors, coming into the house. I mean, we all love that movie. But I also think that one of the biggest things I think I've gleaned from the classroom now is boundaries when it comes to certain sensitive topics and issues that might come up in the classroom, but
such as?
I mean, we were just talking about, Dr. Clay and I were talking about how a young man had mentioned that he had been angry since he was born. Right? He's been angry since he was born, and you said he was how old, Dr. Clay?
6.
6 years old, right? So in situations where there may be, it may require the parent, or it may require a greater form of mediation, I see my role in the classroom as someone who can field something very sensitive like that, whether it be mental illness, mental health, trauma, something that may veer beyond my professional expertise, and forward that to the right channel so that the child gets the help that they need. Because it could be a cry for help, and it could be a cry for help that I'm not qualified for, and I don't take a Joe Clark approach to the classroom. I try to take a more informed, boundaries type of approach to the classroom. I want to, if I'm with the child every day, in one way or another, I definitely feel like I'm a trusted adult in their life. Mm-hmm. But I also don't want to overstep that trust in a way that might cause more harm than good. So I want to be mindful of having, because as a black man in a black boy school, one could tend to have a Superman complex. I'm here.
What do you mean?
Well, when you look at the teaching profession, it's an extremely noble, well-decorated profession where if you're looking at it from the outside in, everybody, oh, I would do this and I would do that. They kind of Monday morning quarterback everything. But you get in that classroom for a year or two and you start to realize your limitations, and you start to understand how important it is to take your ego out of certain situations that you feel like you would do, because that child has a whole life, a whole home life, a whole larger life that you should be informed by, and not necessarily what's most pressing on your mind to do, but be able to look at the big picture. So if someone does come to you with sensitive information, if they're entrusting you with that, you have to try to take your individual bias and what you should do out of it, and really, every school has, protocols when it comes to that, and really try to follow the protocols in a way that once it backtracks, you won't find yourself kind of overstepping. I've done that multiple times, and I was happy that once everything kind of shook out, that the process was followed and the child got helped. Right? It wasn't a situation where the child didn't get what they needed. So I kind of learned to trust the process. Obviously you got to have colleagues. You're always going to run up into things that might make you say, whoa, but you got to have a poker face, and you got to be able to be kind of emotionally strong in a way that still allows you to make the best decision for the child, and not necessarily run with your immediate emotion as if it were your child.
In the example of the 6-year-old, Dr. Clay, tell the tale. How did that shake out after the child said to you, "I've been angry since I was born"? It's funny, but it's not funny.
Yeah, and he said, "I've been angry since I was born." He paused and he said, "And I don't want to talk about it no more." Mm-hmm. And the look he gave me, it kind of just hit me to my core, because being a counselor for that long, I've never heard a 6-year-old say something of that degree or something of that nature. So then I'm going back to the parental piece. No support. This child said, "I've been angry since I was born." And he said it was because of my father not being present. Mm-hmm. And then it took me back to my growing up, because my father wasn't present.
But you turned out okay.
Right. But I had the support.
Okay.
And had the belief. My 3rd grade teacher, Miss Lee, planted a seed in me when I was in elementary school. Shared with me that I could be anything I want to be when I grow up. I'll never forget it. Mm-hmm. And I was in the 3rd grade, and I was an angry child because of my father not being present and the physical, emotional abuse that I grew up in.
So as a counselor, how did you address that 6-year-old who said he was angry since he was born?
Well, I just continued to check with it. Well, work with him. He ended up transferring out of the school. Mm-hmm. But I started meeting with him once a week, sharing with him different strategies, and I have some very out-of-the-box strategies that I use with my black males.
Give me an example, because let's call a thing a thing.
Okay, it's a little unorthodox, but looking at
we are in unorthodox times.
Okay, so trying to help black males understand their emotions and the importance of the release. Mm-hmm. I utilize the toilet. I have little play toilets in my office, and they're on the shelf. And when the kids come in, they go right to the toilet. Because they want to know, why do you have a toilet? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I elaborate on the fact that sometimes, when you eat something and it makes you feel, and when you feel sick,
constipated,
how do you release it? Mm-hmm. You sit on the toilet. Mm-hmm. So then I ask them, who hurt you? Why are you angry? What is it inside of you that you've never talked about? And if you release it, you know you're gonna feel better. And the green light come on. And then they get it. And I started this back in 2009 with this analogy. And it worked. Because you can't argue with the fact that when you release physical waste, you feel better. So when you dealt with trauma growing up, and we've been taught to internalize our trauma, now you can use an analogy of a toilet to understand if I release it and talk about it, I'm going to feel better. And the green light come on, and they think it's funny. But then when they realize that, wow, this is real, it works. I said, just release it, because you know you're gonna feel better.
Let's talk a little bit about discipline, because Dr. Clay, you've obviously had more experience than Austin, but this isn't your first school.
Not my first school, not my first rodeo.
Right, exactly. So you've been to another school, but short of parental involvement, discipline is probably one of the biggest concerns. Discipline / safety when you're dealing with children who are unruly, misbehaved, undisciplined. How do you deal with that?
So we talking now, huh, Harry?
Yeah. Don't we always?
Yeah. So I think that in most urban settings across the country, that's the $1 million question. Most districts hang their hat, or most schools hang their hat on some cultural way of doing things that they hope feeds into the discipline of the child so that they don't have to be overly punitive, right? We know all about the school to prison pipeline and how we're trying to not suspend kids and, not come down as the justice system would come down and have kids get used to being suspended, so much so that they're used to other types of consequences, right? So in my experience, I would say that throughout my tenure, discipline has been an issue. I think that because schools are trying to avoid being overly punitive, there is an openness to various other restorative practices, right? Restorative practices, where
my father used to restore my tail.
But these restorative practices are noble attempts, and I don't mean that in a facetious way, but they're noble attempts to try to get the student to understand where they went wrong, and if it was with somebody or if it was with a group, to talk it out, mediate, admit fault, accept accountability, and essentially, restore the order or the emotion that was there. Whatever harm was done, kind of repair that. I think one of the challenges, though, is that what if it happens again?
Right.
Or what if it continues to happen?
Exactly.
Right? So I think that most schools across the country are still working their way through that. What does it look like to draw the line on certain behaviors, and, how sustainable is that? So that's been my experience, is that it largely is a looming question, I think, in every district, probably across the country.
Your thoughts about discipline, Dr. Clay?
I agree. I mean, genetic loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean, the environment that the students, they go home to every day. If the home environment lacks discipline, then how can you discipline the child when they're not being disciplined at home? And then they come into the school setting. And then the school has to find a way to balance out discipline at the same time, trying to educate this child and build rapport and a relationship with the child. So it's like the school is handcuffed because the home is handcuffed and the environment is handcuffed. Our country is handcuffed. Our country is not disciplined. Look at the dysfunction in education in the United States of America today. So how do you expect a child to walk into a school and understand discipline when the environment at home in which we raised up in lacks discipline. It's a tough battle for educators. And I just commend teachers because today teachers are counselors, therapists, educators, parents, grandmothers, aunts and uncles. They're everything. And these kids are coming to the classroom every day lacking discipline. I call them pluck-plucks. Pluck-pluck.
What's a pluck?
It's like baby kids. You know, they worse than baby kids. Because there's always one child in that school gonna pluck your nerve.
Right.
One, it's a pluck-pluck. And the sisters pluckette. If they don't die, they multiply. They worse than baby kids. Everybody know a pluck-pluck.
Yeah.
They lack discipline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to come with innovative ways just to address the discipline. Yeah. I agree. You know, it's just.
So, why would a student come to see you? Do you have a set group of students that come to see you that may have no problems at all, and they just need a checkup, or do they come to see you because you are the first step before you get sent to the principal's office?
I think because they want to check in, or sometimes I am the first person before they go to the vice principal or to the principal. We have two counselors. My principal, we 500 students. We have two counselors in my building. And
That's a huge caseload.
No, it's not.
You don't think so?
That's excellent. Most elementary schools only have one counselor for 600 to 700 students.
Oh my gracious.
The national ratio is 1 to 250. So my principal believes in mental health, so she hired a second counselor. So we have two counselors in my building. So yeah, I think to answer your question, sometimes the kids, you know, they feel like, you know, at the beginning of the school year, we have to go into the classroom and do an introductory lesson. So I truly believe in transfer your trauma with truth and transparency. Transfer your trauma with truth and transparency from the counselor perspective. So when I go in and introduce myself, I talk about my struggles growing up and everything I went through.
To the children?
Yes. Because you want to transfer your trauma with truth and transparency, so when they're going through those same struggles, they say, oh, Dr. Clay went through this. He understands. So I need to go talk to him about this.
Okay.
So I think that's important with all educators, because it's about relationship and rapport building. Because kids look at us like superheroes. Wouldn't you agree?
They do.
They see us in the store, oh, I saw Dr. Clay at Target. Like, we don't go to Target.
They do.
Target, you get a plug today. But I'm just saying, what you think? What you think?
I 100%, Doc. I wanted to kind of put a pin on the discipline part, because I know we have listeners here in D.C. and beyond, and I think that's a question we should be asking our community, right? Like, schools are functions of the community, right? It's a social good. You know, at the end of the day, I don't know how much different schools are than hospitals. You know, you accept everyone. Now, you have some schools that, you know, are certain demographics and things like that, but we are essentially functions of the community. We are positioned in neighborhoods. So, you know, schools alone may want to try not to be so isolationist in the way that they might approach big problems, and they might want to pull in other resources. But when it comes to, I think, education in this country, we look at it wrong. I think we look at it as what they're doing. No, you're a part of this. Yeah, you know, yeah. It's not what's happening over there. This is something that the community benefits from. This is something that the city benefits from, the state and the country. So if you're putting the onus on these people to do this job, although they are in the community, then that's already kind of a fundamental misnomer. Right, you know, you're already kind of misdiagnosing who's responsible for this issue. And I think that when I'm looking at all the comments that you have, and it's like, if we had, and I don't want to preach, but if we had,
go ahead and preach.
If we had people,
tell it like it is.
Yeah, if we had, because these are our kids.
Right.
You know, even if you don't have kids, these are the kids that you talk about if something happens on the news. They're the kids that you talk about if, you know, something is happening, you know, negatively. So I think the question is, what are we doing about disciplining our kids, right? If I have them for 8 hours and they go home for you to 8 hours and they go to the Boys and Girls, they've already been in 3 or 4 spots, you know, in one day. So I would love to pose the question, what are we doing to discipline our children, right? Because the more hands in, I think the better the results. The more hands off, the more of the same.
Yeah,
I came from, I'm not even that old, but I remember when other people could discipline me. Soft and strong.
Right.
I caught a couple of those growing up. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I don't even know you. But it's like, oh no, but that taught me one of those lessons that, oh no, when I'm around certain places, I tighten up, I straighten up, and I didn't see anything wrong with that. And to this day, I still carry myself in that way. And I would love to get the perspective on the community, on a community solution, or citywide solutions on what discipline looks like. Because attacking it in silos, I just don't think is going to work.
Well, and you spoke about the Joe Clark dynamic. When I was in Prince George's County Public Schools, we had Joe and Jane Clarks. We had Black Joe and Jane Clarks. We had white Joe and Jane Clarks.
Absolutely.
And obviously, as you said, you caught, you caught disciplinary measures from people in the community. Well, I caught those disciplinary measures from a teacher in 3rd grade and a teacher in 4th grade when I was in 3rd grade, and a teacher who was teaching 5th grade when I was in 4th grade. And so, as you said, there were a lot of hands in. But what do you believe has changed, Dr. Clay, to the detriment of school culture? Obviously, let's put corporal punishment aside, okay? Because that's a we need to do a show on that. But something has changed that even in some of the best communities, these children do not know how to act in school. And so even when you have parents who are present, are they being given too much? Are they being given too much freedom at home to talk back to their parents, and do they think it's okay to now do it in school? What would you say?
I think it's a better understanding of their rights as students.
Wow, that's interesting.
Very
Because see,
sophisticated.
back in the day,
We didn't know.
they didn't understand their rights. See, you could discipline a child, but now kids will say, I'll call CPS, Child Protective Services, on the teacher. And they this teacher's under investigation.
Even though that child is unruly, undisciplined, rude, and
the system
wrong like
the
two
system
left
is going to
shoes.
take the side of the child 9 times out of 10. And the investigation has to take place. Now this teacher's pulled out of the classroom, or this educator pulled out of the classroom, because students now understand their rights because of social media. Because once, everything happens on social media now, boom, well, I'm going to do this. Call Child Protective Services. Or this is what you can do now. And they share this and it's spread all around the country. So now you have teachers, educators who's just paranoid and scared. So now and then the community is so, I think the community don't realize, especially when you look at it from elementary level. They see these innocent children walk into a building, not understanding the social, emotional trauma these kids bring into the building every day.
100%.
When I shared some of the stories of some of the, with people outside of education, they don't believe it. And that's why it's important to get the community involved.
because you don't believe what you don't know.
Right. So like we had Men Make a Difference Day in my school this year, we had about 110 black men and Latino men came out. And I stood in the cafeteria in front of them and I told them, the brothers in here, we can't do this by ourselves. I said, each one of you men in this audience, you need to check, I'm checking you right now. I need you to get up in here and help us. Because we can't do it. It's only 6 of us. And it's 110 of y'all in here right now. So moving forward, I need y'all to support us. Because these are our kids.
Let's talk about another really difficult topic. I'll start with you, Dr. Clay. We have seen over the past year or so school shootings, deadly violence. Rich Neck Elementary, 6-year-old shot his teacher in Virginia.
Right.
Mass shooting in Robb Elementary. What happened in Tennessee a year ago, and as a result, the Tennessee State Legislature approved teachers having, guns in class. And before the program, we were talking about this particular issue. But the thing that surprised me when this first was reported is that there are at least 31 other states that allow teachers to carry firearms in class. It runs the gamut from New Hampshire to Colorado and now Tennessee and and the like. Are you concerned about your own safety in school? And if so, why or why not?
No, I'm not.
Why not?
Because I get up every morning and I pray.
Okay.
And I ask God to take care of me so I can take care of these kids. So I've never been one to operate in fear because I don't get caught up in news.
Mm-hmm. Except this program.
Well, what I mean by, it's television programming.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm watching events of school shootings, my human nature will cause me to go into my building in fear. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I try to, just practice a balance of spiritual understanding that I'm here for a purpose and I'm here to serve and I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm not going to operate in fear because I can't help my kids.
Mm-hmm.
If I walk into my building and I'm in fear, how can I help them? Mm-hmm. And it's up to every educator. Every educator is different.
Which brings me to the next question. If you had the option to be armed, or would you?
No.
And you're shaking your head no.
Absolutely not. It's a sad day, I think, in America where our teachers have guns. Now,
strapped up.
I could probably, and I'm not a politician, I could probably think of 1,000 other solutions before letting the teacher have a gun. That is just politically lazy. That means that there is no will to actually want to solve the problem. They're just going to throw a gun at the problem, which is wild, I think. And I think, again, it shows that when it comes to this community conversation or the national conversation of what does discipline look like, now it's become, well, you got your gun. It's become the Wild West. Right. It's like, wait, what's next? If we're here now allowing teachers to have a gun, who's to say that the teacher won't get crazy one day?
And lose it.
There's just several common sense arguments that I could probably raise without thinking that I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? There is truly no place for a gun in a classroom. No place.
I mean, you get upset with your colleague.
There's no.
I ain't worried about the student. I'm worried about my colleague who's getting on my nerves.
You having a mental
and I had a bad day at home.
There is no place. I would actually feel less safe knowing that teachers are armed than the idea of a student bringing a gun in the class. Because they're adults, and I watch the news, So no, I'm not comfortable with that, and I would never do that, ever.
I did not want to end this conversation on a down note, but if both of you could kind of share your best story, the story that you have told, and that you believe 10 years from now you'll still be telling that great story about an experience as a teacher.
I got mine off the top of my head, Doc. You want to go first?
No, you go first.
Okay.
Your name gives the letter A.
Okay. This is my actual teaching origin story. So, I was a career changer. I was asked to speak at elementary school for career day by a friend of mine who was an educator. 3 weeks before that, I'm thinking I'm grown. I'm going out on U Street on a Friday night. I park my car, you know, U Street's a hard place to park. I park my car on one of the side streets. I see a young man carrying, it's about 8 p.m. It's just now getting dark. I see a young man and his brother. He probably had to be no older than about third or fourth grade, carrying a couch, attempting to carry a couch on his back. So I yelled out, hey man, you need some help? He's like, yeah. So he's like, I'm trying to carry this couch in my house for my parents. And I say, okay, I'm gonna help you. So I help him carry the couch in. We have a cool kind of, chat, and that's it. 3 weeks later pass, and I'm going to the career day that my colleague asked me to speak at, and I'm talking about communications. I'm talking about journalism. I'm talking about different things. And right there in the front row was that young man. Wow. Right? And he looked at me like,
what are you doing here?
What are you doing here? And I looked at him like, and it was just kind of one of these amazing moments that probably would have never happened had I not been in that school building, that our paths crossed that way. And as fate would have it, I would become a classroom teacher. That's one of my best stories that I have. Yeah.
You've got a minute, Dr. Clay.
I'll say about 3 years ago, I was going through a traumatizing thing in my personal life, and I was having some thoughts. I'm being transparent. Mm-hmm. Suicidal. I was just messed up. And I woke up, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and it would just tear me apart. And I went to my Facebook page. One of my former students posted a statement, and it stated, I'm paraphrasing, she said, you probably don't remember me when I was a student at District Heights Elementary, but it was those times, it was during that time period where you just pulled me for 30 minutes. But I really didn't tell you what was going on in my life. But I just wanted to say thank you because it really truly inspired me. And she said, before your time is up on this earth, I just want to say thank you and let you know how much that changed my life and how much you continue to change other people's lives. And I just broke down and started crying like, basically was God saying, man, you tripping. And it was her. And this girl, she had 3 kids.
Yeah.
And that was in elementary school, probably about 20 years passed, and I just woke up that morning and saw that post, and I started crying. I went back to sleep, and I was good after that.
Yeah. Dr. William Clay, Austin Weatherington, thank you both. And to those teachers and counselors and educators out there towing the line every day, we thank you as well. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, May 1st. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.
This program was brought to you by WHUT and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. For more information on this program or any other program, please visit our website at WHUT.org. Thank you.